I have a message for the Prime Minister, and that message is simple. If you won't use the powers you already have, don't ask for more. We already have firearms laws in this country. We already have legislation, and we already had provisions that allowed firearms to be removed from the individuals involved in the Bondi attack. Those powers existed. So the question Australians need answered is this: why weren't they used? Instead of confronting that failure, we're now being told that the solution is more laws, another buyback, more restrictions, more red tape, all aimed squarely at people who have done nothing wrong. That doesn't make Australians safer. It just buries failure under paperwork. And this isn't just about firearms, it's everything now. We have regulations stacked on top of regulations, compliance requirements that go unchecked, rules that aren't enforced, warnings that aren't acted on. So what's the point? If laws aren't enforced, then they don't prevent harm. They just punish the people who are already doing the right thing. Let's be clear here. Someone didn't do their job. Powers weren't used. Decisions weren't made when they needed to be. And now Australians will pay the price for that failure. I've had enough of this. Enough of governments responding to enforcement failures by tightening the screws on everyone else. Enough of law-abiding Australians being treated like the problem. Enough of political correctness getting in the way of people doing the right thing. Do the job. Use the laws you already have. Let police and counter-terror teams do their jobs properly, stopping violent acts and terrorist threats without politicians standing in the way. Because more laws don't equal more safety. Competence does. And I'll say it again so there is no confusion. If you won't use the powers you already have, don't ask for more.
Hi, perhaps you recognize me. It's your favorite president.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Anybody in this country doesn't minimise their tax. They want their heads ring.
Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, or they might not choose socialism.
The answer is might, because I want to do you slowly. I want to do you slowly. I was saved by God to make America great again.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Narrative. My name is Stephen Tripp. A big thank you to everyone who is watching this live. If you are, we want to hear from you. You can get in the chat and contribute to tonight's conversation, whether by asking a question or just making a statement, whether you are watching on Facebook, Rumble, or YouTube. We are live on those platforms every single time we go live. And if you are really feeling up to it, the link to StreamYard is in the chat if you want to call in. It's talkback streaming, just like talkback radio in the old days. I don't know if they have talkback radio these days. I think they do, but it's not quite as good as what it used to be. But if you want to call in, hit that link and you can ring through. We've had some great callers of late. So be one of them. As long as you're not sitting there in your underwear or anything like that, you can come on and ask a question or make a statement or whatever you choose and contribute to the conversation. But let's kick things off because we have some great guests tonight talking about some rural issues, which is always great. It's always great to hear what's happening out in the country. Not great circumstances they're often facing. It's a lot of issues that a lot of fires that they have to put out around them, literally and figuratively. But it's always good to hear from our rural people out in the bush. But before we get there, I want to let you know about how you can follow us, and it's by heading to commandingthenarrative.com. And you can find all our content there. You'll get all our previous podcasts. We had a great discussion with Bernie Finn last week, so go and check that one out. And we've had some really interesting discussions about World War II and some history stuff there. So we had Jenny Chan on a couple of weeks ago talking about the Second Sino-Japanese War, which was very, very interesting. A lot of information there that I wasn't even aware of. And of course, we had Professor Eric Lowe on a few weeks ago talking about the Pax Americana and the decline of the British Empire, which was a great conversation. One of the best podcasts we've done. Also, you'll find articles and the newsletters up on the website. Some surveys if you want to participate in those. Surveys are always a lot of fun. And if you want to know who's coming up on the podcast this week, you can find all there on the website, and also any events that we're doing, just like this one here, Reality of Renewables Community Town Hall. This one's going to be out in Dunedoo at the Dunedoo Bowling Club on Saturday, February 21. It's going to start at 6:30 p.m. We've got some great guests there. Stuart Bonds, who I've had on the show before from One Nation, and also Senator Sean Bell from One Nation, the New South Wales Senator. They're going to be speaking to the community in Dunedoo and Dubbo and Coolah and those areas, talking about the renewable energy zone that's being built out there. And they're also going to be doing a tour of that area and check out projects like the Wellington Solar Project, which is pretty incredible from all accounts. And they're going to be seeing that stuff firsthand. They're actually going to do the work of real politicians, actually seeing these things up close and then hear the community concerns about what's happening there. So that's going to be a great event. If you're in the area, please come along. It's a free event, as I said, at the Dunedoo Bowling Club. And to stay up to date with everything that we're doing, please hit the sign up button in the top right-hand corner and you'll get the newsletter from us. If you want to contribute in any way, please head to Buy Me a Coffee. Helps to pay for the stream, helps to pay for the website, and most importantly, gives me a very warm and fuzzy feeling inside, which is much appreciated. It's great to know that good people like yourselves part with your hard-earned money just to support us. So if you would like to flick us a few dollars, you can head to Buy Me a Coffee and do that there. And a new thing, I don't really know how it works. There's a tip jar on Rumble. If you're listening on Rumble, you can tip us. I don't know. I think it's a cryptocurrency thing. If you want to do that, feel free to do so as well. It helps us out. It benefits us in being able to keep doing what we're doing and getting a lot of this information out there. Before we get into the discussion, I'll also let you know about Australians for Better Government. Hopefully we have some exciting things to announce for Australians for Better Government in the coming year, in the next few months that come up. If you want to check out everything that we are doing at Australians for Better Government, it's all about reforming our system of government. Head to australiansforbetter.com and hopefully we'll have some more discussions about Australians for Better Government on the podcast in the coming weeks as well. And lastly, I'll just let you know about this article that I wrote that was published in The Spectator this week. Australians must be given a say on immigration. So please check that one out. And you'll find that article on The Spectator. Also support everything that The Spectator Australia do as well. So for now, let's get into it. We've got some great guests out in Victoria, in rural areas. They're doing a lot of great work there out in the bush and supporting a lot of big issues that they're facing out in those communities. So let's bring them on. First, we've got John Houston and also Andrew Weidemann. Gentlemen, welcome.
How you going, Steve?
Good, mate. Have we got Andrew there?
There thanks, Steve. It might have been a bit of a delay, I think.
No problem at all. Maybe we'll start with you, Andrew. Just for everyone listening, let us know a bit of your background and what you've been doing leading up to this point.
Yeah, no worries at all, Stephen. So, look, I've been involved in agricultural politics for more than 25 years now. I'm previous chairman of Grain Producers Australia, one of the peak industry bodies for the grains industry. I still sit on the board there, and I do a lot of work in terms of chemicals registrations and permit registrations. I work side by side with the team from the Grains Research Development Corporation and Grains Australia. So they're a couple of pretty big bodies in the grains industry, and we work together to make sure that growers get the chemicals they want to produce the food they want. I'm a family farm here at Rapanya, here in Victoria. We're about 50 k's east of Horsham, and if people are travelling through Victoria, they've probably been to the Silo Art Trail as well. Previously, I had my son actually was on the picture of him on the silo here at Rapanya. So just a little bit of quiet history there, but the Silo Trail runs right through the Wimmera, and a lot of the old silos have got quite a lot of paintings on them of particular interest from the area, as well as obviously the way that the area has been developed with history over the generations that have come through. So, so that's sort of the area that I farm in here. We farm wheat, barley, canola, and We've got a white Suffolk stud as well, sheep stud, and we run some commercial prime lamb operation as well here at Rapagna. So yeah, look, it's a very mixed farm, and typical of a lot of farms. There's more than 65% of the Australian farming sector is mixed farm. So yeah, it's been a good place to be. Obviously, the last couple of years have been pretty solid in terms of the years have been very dry. But we've been what I call probably the Stephen Bradbury of seasons this year. We got a late rain right at the end of October, and goodness me, the amount of grain that we've grown from that one sort of 60 mil event, which we hadn't seen for 2 years, has been phenomenal for the region and Victoria. So it really did pump it up. But yeah, so that's the starter, Steve.
Good stuff, mate. It's good to hear about that rain and the bumper crop. That's always good news. Now, John, they tell me you go by the name Hooter, and they also tell me that you're a big personality, and I might have to keep you under control tonight. Let us know about you and what you get up to, mate.
Well, I'm just a volunteer, so my resume is not quite as big as Andrew's, but yeah, look, I'm a grassroots CFA captain, have been for roughly 20 years. I joined as a volunteer when I was 16. We got an engineering business in town, which my dad ran at the time, and I took that over when I was 23 and been there ever since. Still run that, and yeah, stood up at a probably crucial time to be a captain for our brigade, and managed to get a few changes and a semi-new tanker and a new station, which we were probably pretty proud of at the time. But that was a long time ago. My engineering business is just general engineering throughout the business. Got a contracting business as well. We do forage harvesting. Got a John Deere chopper, does a wonderful job. And yeah, just work locally, play sport locally, do a bit of coaching of a under 16 Waves team, stateside competition thing that I've been doing for 15, 16 years as well. So yeah, I like to think I'm a real community person. I'm in the church locally. I'm on the hall committee. I've been in the fire brigade all my life. You know, I just love my community, and I love my state, and I just want to make a difference. I just feel that we need to make a difference, and that's what I want to do.
Now, Andrew, you're the chairman of the Across Victoria Alliance, which I've been hearing a lot about from Katie McCallum and all the great work that you're doing down there. Apparently you're very organised and you're very motivated, and you're confronting a lot of different issues. For everyone that hasn't heard of it before, what's the purpose of the Across Victoria Alliance? Yeah, no, good segue there, Steve. Yeah, so look, as I said before, I've been involved in agricultural politics at the federal level, but also at the state level previously. And I guess what we've seen here in Victoria, the VFF, Victorian Farmers Federation, I suppose, over the years has probably just lost a lot of membership on various singular issues. And I sort of thought that, well, look, when all of these different groups started right around Victoria, that should have been really branches of the VFF to some degree. But the reality is there's a lot of people outside of agriculture that are involved in these groups as well. And there's about 24 groups here in Victoria. And there's another 3 groups, Queensland, New South Wales and South Australia as well. So there's about 27 groups. And we did pick up another one the other day as well here in Victoria on top of that, who have all started for various reasons. In my own area here, I chair the local mining group, the local land protection group. There's also renewable groups here in the local area that I'm a member of as well, Southern Wimmera Regional Research Association and the Wallaloo Gree group. So they're only just a couple of groups here locally. The Wimmera Mallee Environmental and Protection Association up at Warwick Nabil, they're a very big group as well. And they've all started up on the back of the renewables and obviously mining in prime agricultural farming land, Steve. So they replicated right around the state. You've got Glenaladale mining, you've got the Mine Free Mallee group, and look, I could go on. There's too many groups to mention all of them, but they've all got the same problem: agricultural land being used for wind generation and also for transmission of power in what we would say is a very poorly thought through plan for energy development here in Australia.
and it's impacting on farming land. On top of that, we've now seen this rare earths minerals push, which is obviously encroaching into what we would call as prime agricultural land as well. And we feel that that will never be restored back to where it has been so productive for such a long time. It's taken, nearly 200 years, I suppose, of Australian settlement to get a lot of this very prime agricultural productive land up and going. And just for a few numbers here in Victoria, there's about 1.5% of the arable area is all that's used for agriculture in Victoria in terms of broadacre and producing food. We produce 25% of the gross domestic product here in Victoria of all of Australia, and 14% of that is exported out of Australia, out of Victoria. And so we're doing that on a very finite resource. And so having these developments pushed onto prime agricultural land is just been one of the biggest shams, I think, that we've seen politically for Australia. And whether you sit on the net zero or not, we've got to think longer term than just 20 years, because all of these particular projects that are being talked about will all have to be replaced in 20, 25 years' time. And we're starting to see some of those down the Macarthur wind farm down in the southwest of Victoria. That's being turned off, and obviously that's got to be restored back to somewhere near some level of productive capacity. And on top of that, I suppose, Steve, and this is where John has come into it, the CFA volunteers are also one of the groups that I do chair on a weekly basis. We started this process back in March 2025, and every week, every Wednesday night since then, we've essentially had a meeting. Other than through Christmas, we had a week off, but we have at least 35 to 45 people on every week. The invitation list is about 120. That includes all of the key representatives out of the different groups and various groups. And we do have a few politicians that are invited as well on that, and they jump on every now and again just to talk to us about what's going on in their patch and what they're trying to achieve. And of course, what really brought everybody together was the march that we organised and the rally back in July last year in Melbourne, where they estimate somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 people turned up on the steps of Parliament all over the fire services levy issue here in Victoria, which has been what I would say a real impost on rural Victoria, but not only that, all of Victorians. Any asset owner here in Victoria has seen a very steep rise in terms of the fire services levy component. They expanded it to be a volunteers levy, and we've declared it a tax. And that's where I got to know John Hooter here, and his group quite well have been developed on the back of that, the CFA volunteers. And we work together on a weekly basis to try and make sure that we represent the best interests of rural Victoria.
You mentioned the Victorian Farmers Federation, and one man that has had a lot to do with them in the past and has pushed back against them in more recent times is Wade Northhausen of Billboard Battalion. I saw a post on his Facebook that he's had a stroke and is not doing too well. So my thoughts go out to Wade, because I know he's been traveling the country speaking to farmers and trying to get their message out there as well. And I haven't spoken to as many farmers as Wade has, but I know from speaking to you guys, you work hard, and you don't whinge. You get on with it, and you just get the job done. So the fact that you having to face all these issues and speak out against it means that there's something really wrong. And not only are you up against the elements like floods and different things, bushfires as well. I was talking to Bernie Finn last week about the bushfires that are going on in Victoria at the moment. I know, John, you had something to say about the equipment that you guys are having to use when you're battling these bushfires. But one thing that Andrew mentioned was this fire services levy. Now, me up here in New South Wales, I don't know too much about this, and maybe our audience around the country that are not in Victoria don't know too much about this. Can you explain what the fire services levy is and why it's such an issue?
Yeah, so the levy used to be originally on the value of your home, or the insurance value of your home, and that was a pretty standard thing across the whole board. So everyone paid a similar amount, and now they've brought it back to your asset. And the issue that we have with the asset side of it is that farmers have a huge asset. It's, but they have to have a huge asset to be able to make any money, and just to make a comparable income off that money. So when they then start charging them that, farmers, e.g., this is a typical example, a farmer with a household, we like to equate it back to a household. So a household will be paying $5,500, and they probably will be returning an income of $120,000 back through to live off. And now, most of these farmers live in modest homes, or your general run-of-the-mill farmer lives in a modest home, and they're not doing it particularly over the top. They live through droughts, they live through fires, they live through floods, and then every now and then they get a good year, and and they've got to take that while they can. But what we're finding is that they're paying an exuberant amount of money, $5,500, $6,000, even more for the bigger farmers, whereas a comparable person in Melbourne might have an $800,000 or $1 million house, and they're probably paying $400 in this emergency services levy. So, where's the equitability in that? And what's fair? And I think that's what's really riled up the communities, and it needs to change. And we need to get back to a more fairer structure, and that's what we basically started off at the rally, and we wanted the tax scrapped. We want it gone. They have to get back to a fairer system that goes overall, because as we've seen in bushfires that we're having at the moment, they go into asset protection. They're trying to protect towns, they're trying to protect houses, and whatever happens on the farmland, which the government are trying to tax as well and try and make farmers pay for that, is basically all you're trying to do is somehow slow it down, so you can control it before it gets to the next farmhouse or the next town or whatever. So, this is what this is all about to a point. But I think the city people are actually understanding now that the volunteers and the private sector are doing a lot of work out in the communities. Just as many, if not more, private tankers, which is farm tankers. So not only do they pay, a levy that's 10 times as much, but they're also supplying their own vehicles to help run around and put out fires, and they're doing all this for nothing, zilch, and the volunteers are doing this for nothing. And whereas in town there's a service that's supplied, and you get your fires put out for you, and that's fair. That's the way to go. But unfortunately, that's not affordable in the country, and we know that we've got to step up. But why should we be taxed stepping up doing that job?
Is there anything you want to add to that, Andrew? Obviously, you're speaking.
Look, there is. I mean, in terms of getting together and trying to prove a point, what John has just said about in the cities is really important to take into context that we've actually aligned also with the United Firefighters Union and the United Firefighters and Fire Services Victoria, essentially to push back on the Allen government's position at the moment with this emergency services and volunteers tax. And we did have some success where they removed for the next 2 years the increase, which is 184% on rural ratepayers. But that tax has now been increased on all businesses and householders in all of the cities, and they don't have that luxury of that being removed. And where the argument lies at the moment is that we also, previous to this, in the 22-23 year, had a 200% increase on rural ratepayers. And we're now looking at the budget of the CFA and also the FRV, and the money that was supposed to have gone into that isn't. It's actually being used to repay debt here in Victoria, and the government, through a very intricate process, I'll call it, with their books, is not showing the true numbers that are being taken away from rural and city folk in Victoria who are asset holders, and that money is going to retire debt, not to actually replenish this fire services system. Now, John is, like me, I'm a 45-year volunteer as well, and still a volunteer. On our own farm, we have 3 of our own private units that we use to fight fires. But on top of that, our local fire brigade here, my eldest boy, Matthew, he's the lieutenant here in the Repagnat Brigade. And like all of the other young farming lads in the area. They're all involved with the fire brigade to some degree, but a lot of them also have their own private units, and some of them have even bought previously well-maintained fire service CFA units, and they use them on their own farm. And just in the last week, we had a day here in Victoria. A lot of people up in your neck of the woods would know, obviously, you've had the floods and the storms. But here in Victoria, we had a fire index day, or FDI day. They thought and forecast it would be 108, which is a ridiculously high number. It ended up being somewhere around 480. So we had 93k winds. We had 10% or less humidity and 43-degree heat. And so it was insanely hot. And so anything that was up and going was just going hell for leather. And there was a fire just locally here, about 55 k's from our farm, and just on the other side of Horsham in a little town called Natamuck. And it burned out, I think it's about 20 homes, and something more than double of that of structures as well. And the only way they put that out was through the volunteers, the CFA, and farmers using their speed tillers to actually run it down on open paddocks. Now, we actually have the luxury of open paddocks, but where you see the other fires like Alexandra, to some degree even down at the Skipton fire, they were able to manage to pull that up. But in these other fires, when it gets into the timbers, it's really just asset protection. And unfortunately, we have seen one person lose their life. I believe that they got disorientated in the smoke and ran into a ditch and then got out of the vehicle and unfortunately, tragically, was burnt. But look, this situation here in Victoria, we're nowhere near out of the woods yet. They're predicting potentially end of next week, this week coming, that we may also experience some really, really solid conditions as well. And all of this is going to rely on the CFA. Now, I think as John would attest as well, the CFA volunteers are getting very tired. The morale is very low over this fire services levy issue because essentially they were heavily taxing the volunteers as well as those of the people that are actually standing up and fighting the fires. Just for some rough numbers for the listeners, in my own farming business, the 200% increase we saw was around from a few years ago, went to $18,000 on my farm. The extra increase on that would have brought it up somewhere around $45,000 to $46,000 just in fire services levy on top of our shire rates. So that's just an example, and there are many other examples of that here, and that's why everybody has been pushing back so hard on the government, because the volunteers and the funding of volunteers like the State Emergency Service and other groups have always been funded out of general revenue, which everybody contributes to. And so that's been part of the bugbear and why everybody's so passionate, like John and his group of CFA volunteers, in terms of trying to push back on it.
John, Andrew just answered part of the question I was about to ask you, but I'm going to hit you with it as well, because I was doing a bit of research about this before we got on, and I'm seeing that Jacinta Allen, who's the Victorian Premier, is getting a lot of pushback about this CFA funding issue, and she's claiming that the funding hasn't been cut to the CFA, but independent verifiers have come out and said, no, yes, it has been cut, and they've got the figures down here. They're claiming that it's been cut by 12.1 million, but it's saying that the budget for the CFA is roughly about 350 or a little bit less million, 350 million per year. Now, you put out a video recently where you were talking about the fire trucks that you're using are over 20 years old. Can you help me explain to me, if it's getting $350 million in funding, where is the money going? If you're driving around, am I missing something? I know I'm a city boy. I'm living here in the northern beaches of Sydney. I'm not out in these rural communities. I don't really know how it works. Is there something that I'm missing? Because I'm seeing these massive figures of funding. You're talking about trucks on the ground that are over 20 years old. Where's the disconnect? Can you explain it to us?
Mate, yeah, I'm just a volunteer. I mean, I can't explain it. I mean, I don't see it, and I don't know how it happens. You know, and we're not talking about tankers that are over 20-year-old. We're talking about tankers that are 30 up to 40 years old. Now, when I first started as a captain, your tanker was basically looking at 20-year-old, and it was, we're going to pension that off. Might go to 22, maybe, and that's it. Well, our tanker now is 29 years old, doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have airbags, doesn't have electronic stability control. It's a slow truck. It's bouncy all over the road. Yes, it's a good sturdy truck, but its safety aspects are just not up to date. It hasn't got the latest mod cons in rollover protection, things like that. And our tanker's just 29. I hate to think what the poor blokes are driving around in 35 and 40-year-old tankers. Ours is a single cab, like most of them in that age group. So the guys on the back are in the elements. If you've got a burnover, I'd hate to be in a burnover on the back of a tank. I think there'd be a fight to be in the front. You're just pulling out a hood and pulling down curtains and praying that everything's going to be okay. Yes, I know they've been tested, and yes, they should be right. But regardless, it would be a very scary situation, and it'd be scary for the people in the front. But the newer tankers, they've got dual cabs. They've got a door that goes straight out the back. You don't have to hop up, walk around. Yeah, look, it's the safety side of it is just ridiculous. Now, just to put in some context, I don't know how many people in public jobs, and especially the politicians, actually drive around in 29-year-old plus vehicles on days of total fire ban day with no air conditioning and expect it to work. Yet, yes, we understand that we have to put out fires, and fires are going to be on total fire ban days. We understand that's part of the process, and part of what we do, and we do it for free and we do it for nothing, and we don't whinge about that. But why can't we have a little bit of luxury when we're going to and from a fire? Why can't, if someone gets heat struck, why can't we put him in the cab and turn the air conditioning on and cool him off and give him a bottle of water so he can get his bearings and then go back to doing what he wants to do and what he loves doing, and that's helping his community. Do we have to fold up our tanker and head off? It's just not right. And
But even the sheer numbers of this, mate, $350 million, where's that going? I mean, even if these trucks were $1 million each, you should have 350 of them driving around. I don't understand.
Yeah, they're $500,000 roughly for a medium tanker. So, you do the numbers on that. Look, if we just say, let's do a third of our budget, and let's put that into tankers. I've worked it out, about 9 years, you would replace the whole fleet. That's 9 years. You would replace the whole fleet of roughly 2,000 tankers. Now, our age is just getting older, and the rate that they were talking about in the papers, and I won't go right through all the figures, it'll take a while, but the rate they've been bragging about that they're actually going to replace these tankers. Well, I bought all these tankers, we're going to replace them. Well, I worked it out. It's going to take about 50 to 60 years at that current rate for the turnover of them. So we're going to be driving around potentially in 55, 60-year-old tankers before they actually get it sorted. So, it needs to be a massive injection. Let's just reset, get it all back. And that's just not us. That's FRV as well. We need to understand that, yes, we do it tough in the country, but these guys in the city are running into house fires and factory fires and stuff like that. So, it's just as scary, or if not scarier for them. And, I think across the whole board, it needs to change. We can't treat people this way. You can't treat workers this way, and you can't treat volunteers this way. The government just has to stop the waste, stop the unnecessary spending on crap, let's put it. I don't know where it goes. So, yeah, and hopefully that's what we're calling for an inquiry. We want to know where it goes. We want to know where every cent goes, and so let's cut the waste out. Just for instance, a station is $3.5 million roughly now. That's a medium station, nothing flash. I don't know, if I go to my local builder, Navarra Homes, and I ask for a really nice house, he'll probably build me one for $500,000, $600,000. Now, I know which one I prefer to live in. I prefer to live in the house that he builds than a station that's worth $3.5 million. The stations are, yes, they're nice, but they're nothing like a house. Why is there such a difference? Why? And that could pay for another 3 stations. If you put it back to a 600,000, 700,000, you could build 4 stations for that. So we need to ask the government, where is the waste? Where is this money going? And I think I know, but I want to hear it from the government. I want them to explain that to the community, that we're just ripping the system off here and we're funneling money back into whatever projects they like. And, it's got to stop. We can't operate like this.
Mate, I'm here in New South Wales. I'm not even a Victorian taxpayer, and I want to know where the money's going. You just out of fairness, I can imagine people living in other countries watching this. They'd probably want to know where the money's going too. You don't want to hear about any sort of, corruption. We don't know if there's corruption going on, but you almost have to conclude that because it just doesn't make sense. But Andrew, before I'm going to come to you, I just want to play a clip. I mean, the Premier, Jacinda Allen, is copying a lot of flack from this. This is an example in this clip here that I'm going to play right now.
Around the back door. Yeah, weak as piss. Weak as piss. Won't face the community because she knows she's made a mess of things.
Premier, you don't want to speak to your constituents?
Come on, Jacinda, talk to it. Come on, Jacinda, talk to it. You are a coward.
While we go. That was the treasurer, Jacqueline Symes, in that car. We've come here to speak to her and ask questions, and she's not coming out talking to the locals. She's hiding behind closed doors in the hospital, doing chats there and handshakes with patients. The people that have got 30, 40 dead cows out the road and they're shooting cows because they're burned. Other people have got horses that are all burnt. An 82-year-old lady yesterday couldn't get in touch with 000 for the fire. She had to drive 10 k's in to get an ambulance. They've shut the forests down. There's no logging. You're not allowed to clean along the sides of your roads, so the fuel just builds up everywhere. We've just got regulation after regulation that what people decide in the city is not necessarily what's the best for the country, as you can see with the fires.
Now, Andrew, I mean, she just made a point there, which I've even made this point, and I'm in the city. I mean, I see it with the Teals, that, you get city politicians deciding for country people. But my understanding of Jacinda Allen is that she's in a country electorate. She grew up in Bendigo. I mean, shouldn't she be aware of a lot of the issues that are taking place and understand the pressures that people in rural communities are under?
Look, absolutely, Stephen. And look, in fact, her own, I believe, family has been impacted at Harcourt through this particular fire in that area. But on top of that, we've actually seen the Labor government in Victoria over the last 11 years has actually taken their eye well and truly off the ball and essentially, as I think I said earlier, taking money to prop up state debt rather than putting it back where it should have been put back into an CFA and the FRV. But we've seen, and the lady was so right on that interview around the cultural burning, the Royal Commission, the 2009 Black Saturday Royal Commission here in Victoria that was held after that horrendous fires and so many people lost their lives. And 5% of Victoria's bushland was to be subject to burning. And what we have seen since then is the rise of the Labor government and, unfortunately, the impact of the Greens and all of the people who would never hold a hose in their life actually telling everybody else what to do, which is what we're so frustrated. And those people, you can see, they realise that when there's a fire, that it's the CFA and the volunteers who will be there putting out that fire, saving their assets while the fire's burning, and the state doesn't know how to contribute towards that. So, yes, it's very frustrating. We have been talking on the steps of Parliament last Thursday about this with a lot of media. If we can't have the cultural burning, which I've said was a 2009 Royal Commission outcome, 5% of the parks and gardens was to be burnt, cool burnt. We need the cultural grazing to be brought back, particularly into the high country, to try and reduce those fuel loads, because all we're hearing at the moment is everybody says, oh, it's climate change. Well, yes, the climate's been changing for a long time, but these hotter fires have been man-made because the situation is we're increasing the fuel loads, whereas in the pre-us even being here, they were managed much, much better by the First Nations people who have actually looked after and done cultural burning for generations to feed themselves, essentially, but also to make sure that the fuel loads were at a very low level. Now what we're seeing is hotter fires, and we're seeing a lot more bushland burnt. In fact, in some cases, there was at the Natamuck Lake, all the old scar trees and all of the old red gums in that lake were all burnt comprehensively, and they'll never come back. So we've not only lost the red gums and the scar trees, we've lost all the history that's associated with that as well. So we need a more balanced approach. Now, what we did and launched, and John was involved with that, and the United Firefighters Union through Peter Marshall here in Victoria, we stood on the steps of Parliament last Thursday. We launched a petition. Coming onto this podcast tonight, we need 10,000 signatures in the upper house to actually get the Parliament to sit and consider a legislative reform, to have an independent inquiry with at least some level of teeth to look at why we aren't implementing, firstly, the 2009 outcomes now, and also where is the money going, and why aren't we looking at a much better asset plan, rather than seeing, and I'll be quite brutal here, the CFA management being dictated by the government to tell people what they need to do. It's very frustrating from my perspective of being a CFA volunteer for a long time, but somebody's got to say it, and the fact is that my group is absolutely saying it, and they'll continue to champion the cause for rural Victoria.
And that petition, where do people go if they want to sign that? Where can they find
Yeah, look,
it?
if we can work out, we'll get that through to you. Somebody that's possibly watching from one of our groups might even drop it in the chat for me. But we'll see what we can do. But that petition is live, and as I said, 6,500. If we can get to 10,000, we will be able to get that inquiry up and going. And we've only been 3.5 days and 6,500 with very little, I suppose, of people knowing about it. But I think certainly mediums like this are very helpful for my group to actually push the cause.
Look, petitions don't always work, but you have to sign them because sometimes they do work and they do get an outcome. So they are important. And I encourage, when we get that link through, I'll try and share it out, because
thank you.
I encourage everyone to jump on board and to sign it, because what's happening in Victoria, people have been talking about it all the way back to COVID. There's just no accountability at all. We still have questions about the pandemic that haven't been answered, but that's a whole other podcast in itself. But, you're talking about these greenies stopping you from backburning, and the greenies and do-gooders who just want to take the emotional thing. We just had another shark attack here in Sydney today, where a 12-year-old boy was bitten by a shark. It's just because they want to get rid of the shark nets.
Yeah.
Had things in place. You're talking about backburning way back to when the Aborigines were doing it. This stuff's been going on for hundreds of years, maybe even millennia, and some little greenie sitting in their one-bedroom unit in Glebe thinks they know better. But let's move on, because
just one quick one to mention there, Steve, that the burning also regenerates the forests as well.
Yeah.
And
we used to talk that in school.
Yep, absolutely. It's just 101, essentially what we learned at school. You need that burning, and particularly to heat up those seeds so they'll regerminate and continue to make the forest go. Because what you'll see is eventually, if we don't have the burns, that they'll just diminish altogether. But they're getting that hot because of the fuel loads. We're actually burning everything, including the seeds at the moment.
Yeah,
in not in all cases, but in quite a few.
It's just madness. But John, they tell me that you're a bit of a musician, and you've got some music out there. Now, when people tell me that, I've heard this before, and I usually roll my eyes and go, "Oh yeah, whatever." But you sent through a song, and it's actually pretty good, I must say. I'm a hard person to please, but you impressed me, mate. I don't know how you did it, but let's play a little bit of it now, so people know what we're on about. This is a song called "To Lions, Mines, and Turbines We Say No."
Let the farmers grow. The whole damn state is in a rage. Our rights erased on every page. Scrap the law, scrap the lie. It's labor's hoax. We won't comply. They preach the end. They.
All right, mate. Good stuff there. Tell us a little bit about the music.
Look, the music, that one really fell into my lap pretty quickly, that one. Look, I like writing things and putting things down, and I've wrote a lot of good verses over the time that have gone into papers, and I think I've won a few Sun Herald pens of the week over my time. But yeah, I was just devastated. I wanted to do something for the renewables when they were protesting in Melbourne, and I sort of was sitting in my tractors and doing my stuff, and I thought, hang on, this is sounding pretty good. So I started writing it down, and one bit led to another, and that's the song, and I've got it out there, and thankfully it hits a chord, and I just want to, through music you can open a lot of avenues, and you can share a lot of emotion, and you can make the words, you can paint the words through your ears, and that's what I want to do. I'm not a farmer. I wish I was, but I really feel for the farmers and what they're going through, and this is just my contribution for them.
And the message that you're trying to get across in that song is that these people in rural communities are just getting bombarded with all different issues. I mean, we've been talking about the bushfires and the fire services levy. We haven't even started to talk about the renewables yet and the high voltage transmission lines that are crossing the country and the land that's being cleared for wind and solar. Is that part of it as well?
Yeah, it's just the whole thing. It's the whole package. The poor farmers have gone through drought. They went through some flooding not long ago. Before that, they've just been doing it tough, and it's just like wave after wave of a relentless whacking around the ears. It's like a war, and they're the ones that are copying it all the time. And I don't think people realise, the general population don't realise that where our food comes from, and it comes from our farmers. And if we don't have that, our food's going to come from overseas, and the control measures around that are just not as much as what they are in Australia. And we're very lucky and very fortunate that we've got great farmers that make great products, the safe products. Let's reserve that and keep it good. Keep Australia a wonderful place. We shouldn't have to import food from overseas. And there's more than just governments involved in that. There's a whole thing, and that's another story. But I just want people just need to realise, all people need to realise that we're all part of a big cog. The farmers are very important to that big cog. It's the same as the people in Melbourne that make machinery and cars or whatever. Now they don't do that now, but the things that they do is important. But the farmers are just as important, if not more important. So if we kick one side of or one part of our society, we're just screwing the whole lot of us over at the end of the day, and it's not right.
But even, Andrew, the government's own documents show how idiotic and how much of lunacy all this stuff is. This is a document that I've talked about in the past. This was put out by the Victorian government in 2022. Yeah. It's the Offshore Wind Policy Directions paper that was put out in March 2022. Yeah. And this is advocating why Victoria needs offshore wind as opposed to onshore wind. And if you go down to page 18, it says it right here. Is this the right one? Okay. But there are significant challenges for onshore wind and solar to meet all of our net zero energy needs. Analysis indicates that to meet net zero targets using onshore renewables could require up to 70% of Victoria's agricultural land to host wind and solar farms. That's 70% of Victoria's agricultural land to get to net zero. And you can see on this diagram, this is the government's own diagram showing how much land would need to be used for the requirement to get to net zero in Victoria. Now, Andrew, I mean, the scale of these projects is just off. It's you can't even imagine. And then you have to get the high voltage transmission lines out there as well. So you're taking up even more land. I mean, do people really understand what we're doing to this country when it comes to these new energy?
Well, they don't. Look, that's the problem here. And if you recall what I said about the 1.5% of the arable area here in Victoria, it's 4.5% nationally. So producing all of the GDP, so of agriculture. I just want to make a really pertinent point here that I've always looked at, look, I'm fortunate being able to produce food on the farm and that, but there's people like John, his businesses as well, and all of the people associated, I call it agriculture. And all of the people that are involved, whether they own a farm or not, and businesses, somewhere along the line, they're interconnected with the agricultural industry here in Australia. And that's one of the key strengths of the group, the Across Victoria Alliance, with all of these groups, has people from all walks of life involved in all of these different groups. And there's some amazingly talented, as you've seen here tonight with John. He's a humble, pretty handy cricketer and footballer as well. And he's just a key example of what our group is about, with leaders who are amazing. And it is an absolute honour to just chair this group, because the quality of the people that are involved in it are absolutely 100% Aussie, and they have only the best of interests for this nation. And it's an absolute, as I said, honour to do that. Now, when you look at that piece of paper and you look at the picture of that, and you think about what I'm talking about, that's the food bowl of essentially quite a large part of the nation that is looking to be covered in transmission lines and increasing our propensity for fires. That was another finding in the 2009 Royal Commission, where they said that all of the power lines should actually eventually go underground. Now, what are we doing? We're not even listening to what are the mistakes of the past in our planning processes. I think we all know as business people that intermittent power from the wind and Mother Nature is not going to drive the energy needs of this nation. And so we need to be looking longer term. The hydrogen, clearly nuclear is a big option, and will only get stronger as the nations around the world are proving. And of course, coal. We know that we're exporting it to every other nation in the world. And, if we wanted to stop and get ourselves at net zero, we just stop basically exporting coal overnight. Now, the nation's not going to do that, because we'll go broke. And I think this is where, I think about what groups and people like Barnaby Joyce are saying. It's pretty bloody clear. I mean, if we want to go down this pathway and break the nation, and we're already seeing that in Victoria, we've got close to $200 billion worth of debt, and every day people in Victoria, there's $27 million worth of interest. So that's basically every hour it's about 1.1 million an hour in interest we're losing. Think of all that money that we could be saving and investing into other things. Now, I think at least in your state of Queensland up there, you seem to have a leader there at the moment who has a very keen focus on doing what's right for his state and getting things back on equilibrium. And hopefully here in Victoria, in the next election, we will have a big say in what happens politically, and that we can actually get a team that will actually start to rebuild Victoria. But by God, we're a long way behind at the moment, I can tell you.
You're holding an event coming up next month. It's this inaugural conference that you're holding. It's going to be having Barnaby Joyce as a guest speaker, but also Jess Wilson, who's the new leader of the opposition, and also guest entertainer Marty Fields. I mean, you can head to your Facebook page and find the links to all this. But tell us about this event. What are you hoping to achieve?
Yeah, so look, clearly these types of events, a conference is really crucial. One, that it sets the agenda for the group in terms of policy outcomes for the year, and we're looking at we've got some amazing speakers, and we'll actually send our full agenda. It'll be out this week to you, Stephen. But we've got people talking about new land access legislation opportunities to try and look at how we can manage not just for mining access, but for transmission and other things. Get the planning laws back. Get the ability to be able to use VCAT here in Victoria to argue whether or not you should have things next to your property or not. But on top of that, we've got speakers talking about the fires. We've got speakers, and some people on here will know Aidan Morrison, Ivan Kennedy. There are a couple of keynote speakers that have been to a number of places. I mean, I think most people would have seen them either on Sky News or on other TV channels and mediums. And I know that Aidan has actually addressed the federal opposition team with his research and findings. So all of these things will come together, and the conference, we will have some outcomes of that, Stephen, and that will then set the agenda for us to look at who in the political landscape, regardless of the party, that they are from, who will support the outcomes of our conference and the ideals of the group going forward into 2026. And with the election looming in November the 28th here in Victoria, that'll come around sooner rather than later. So we want to make sure that we get into it early. So it's the Sunday the 8th. We've got a barbecue welcome with Barnaby. It's a sitting week for the Feds. So Barnaby's made a great opportunity and come down to talk to the group. And then on the Monday, we'll have Jess Wilson. Jess will speak to the crowd. Potentially Danny O'Brien, who's the Nationals leader, may also be there. We're waiting on a confirmation from him. And we have invited the Premier, Jacinta Allen, to speak at lunchtime as well. So all of these things are in train, and hopefully, we'll put together a pretty big package. It's being held in Horsham. It's a big rural centre in the Wimmera, in my neck of the woods. And the venue will hold over 500 people if we get to that level. But at this stage, we're certainly looking for anybody that's got a keen interest on these topics, particularly in the mining, in the renewable space. In the mining space, we've got Bill Malcolm and John Russell speaking. Professor Bill Malcolm, he's a senior lecturer and an economist in Melbourne University, well versed in terms of knowledge in terms of economics around some of these projects that are being thrown at us, and particularly mining in this case. And John Russell, who's a Dr. John Russell, he's an expert soil scientist, independent and retired. He's been looking at all of the different mining processes that have been put forward in Victoria, and he's been looking at the restoration and work that's been around that in terms of the trials, and he will present his findings to the group as well. So, so look, it's got quite a lot in it for everyone that's got an interest in this topic, and anybody that's pro or whatever, we really welcome them to come as well, because we need to make sure that we hear a balanced discussion and that people come from all areas to talk about their concerns. In particular, I think the caveats on land at the moment is a big topic here in Victoria, particularly around people that have signed up as a host of a wind farm, and the caveats that have been applied to their land, how that then impacts their business going forward, and how that will be managed. And we're also concerned from a shire level in terms of just how that's going to go through the planning processes in the future for people who want to build homes next to a wind farm development. Even if the wind farm is never built at the moment, people can't actually get a planning permit to build a home or a shed because of these wind turbines. Now, this is just a crazy state of affairs. That you can build a 3-story building next to a 1-story dwelling in a city, and the person with the 1-story has no ability to actually say they don't want that next to them.
So if people want to get tickets, they can head to your Facebook page. It's the Across Victoria Alliance Facebook page, and I suggest everyone follow that page as well and keep up to date with everything that you guys are doing there. John, are you going to be performing your music at the conference?
Well, there'll be some music performed there. Yep, there'll be a couple of songs going on. I've actually got another one. It'll be coming out Friday, but it's more around the fires and the way we've been treated, the firemen. So and I just want to let everyone know, Julie has put the link to the petition in the chat. She put it in the Rumble chat. I've forwarded it on to the Facebook and YouTube chat. So if anyone wants to sign that petition that you guys were talking about earlier, please click on that. And Julie's also said these two fellas go above and beyond, and we are so grateful to have them representing us. So a lot of love for you guys out there. What's that you're holding up there, John? So that's our mascot So I'm the president of the CFA volunteers group as well. So we've got our latest mascot. Unfortunately, I'll show the other one if I've got 5 seconds. This was our original mascot. We copped a little bit of heat over that. As you can see, we had to abbreviate a few things, and then they didn't want us using the koala. So we've come up with the kookaburra. We're laughing now. So what we want to do is put these on every fence throughout Victoria, in the city and in the country, and just bang them out there and just really highlight that, the flight of everything that's going on, not just with the farmers, but also the fire people and and a lot of other things as well. So, it's a great opportunity. You can buy these. We're getting them out. We've sold about 1,500 of them now, and it's going gangbusters. But we want to send a clear message that everyone walks down the street, they're going to see one of these somewhere, and they're going to take them home or go home and say, we've got to vote for a better future moving forward. Vote for our fireys. Vote for our state, and let's end this madness.
Yep. Right, guys. Thank you for coming on tonight and letting us know about everything that's going on. I mean, you guys seem to be fighting battles all around the place, and you're up against it. So good on you for pushing back. I mean, there was a comment from Katie McCallum in the chat before that said you guys should just be focused on farming and providing the food for the nation, not having to deal with a lot of the issues that you're having to deal with. But now we're at the most important part of the show, and I'm going to put you guys in charge of the next government of Australia. And I'm going to start with you, Andrew. It's called Build Your Own Fantasy Government. Now you can choose 5 or 6 people to head up the next Parliament of Australia, to show some leadership and take Australia forward. They don't have to be politicians, and they don't even have to be alive. They can be living or dead. But whoever you choose, 5 or 6 people, it's your pick.
So do you want names now, or you want?
Yeah. I'll put you on the spot, mate.
Well, I'd suggest. Well, my view of it is that we need to get the brainchild of the past best treasurers of Australia together in a bit of a think tank to actually start to put together a strong financial agenda for Australia. Because at the moment, what we're seeing is this populist approach towards politics and not the strength of character that we need to run this country. And at the moment, it's running into the ground. Debt has to be repaid at some particular point in time. And at the moment, all we seem to be doing is appeasing to people who actually create no value for Australia. And the ones that are creating all the value are getting taxed to the nth. And I think that when you start to look at more than 50% of the population is on a government handout, we've got some serious problems, because I know a lot of those people would rather be working for themselves and creating value for Australia than having to wait for government to give them a handout. But look, in terms of names, obviously the strongest one in my mind is Peter Costello, a strong figure of Australia. Obviously Paul Keating, from the Labor side of things, was another one. And I think that a talent that Australia has lost for the moment, I'm so hopeful that he'll come back, is Josh Frydenberg. I think that he has got a massive future in Australian federal politics, should he choose to come back. So there's 3 just off the top. I'd have to take a bit more depth and think about what extra we would need if we're picking a team, because being a past footy president as well, I did spend a lot of time trying to make sure that I didn't just get all the centre-half forwards. We actually need somebody who can get him the ball.
Mate, just trying to see Peter Costello and Keating work together.
Yeah.
Not kill each other. That would be something.
You know what? I actually reckon they would. Seriously. Yeah. I reckon they would work together. Yeah.
Look, those two, I think, were old school politicians that actually had conviction, and they believed in something, and they really wanted to advance the country. They might not have always agreed, but that's the sort of politicians we need to get back to, in my view. So I think you've picked some good choices there.
There's one other caveat I'll give you, and I reckon the captain of the team is Mitch Hook, former Minerals Council chair, one out of left field. I reckon if he was the chair and you had those people around him, I reckon we would have a pretty solid Australian economic situation again, and we wouldn't be going down rabbit holes like we are at the moment.
Yeah. John, before I get to you, we've had a caller dial in, so let's bring her on. Katie McCallum.
Is Katie
going?
G'day. How you going, guys?
Good, thanks.
Good to see you here, Hooter. Hey, I just wanted to ring in. First of all, if I got my chance to do my list again, I think I'd probably stick Andrew Weidemann as my number 1 pick for the Prime Minister. And probably, Hooter, you'd be the Minister for Communities and Rural Australia, I reckon. That'd be the go. But look, Stephen, that I'm the chair of Let's Rethink Renewables, which is a group that you're a part of as well. And we're just trying to bring attention to all of Australia about what's happening, all of Australians about what's happening around this country in regards to the loss of our productive farmlands and our rural landscapes and our wildlife habitats. More importantly, the Australian way of life because of these renewables. And look, I was really fortunate to get to join in with these guys on their meetings. I started jumping on a few months ago, and we've been in this fight for a few years now all around Australia, and these guys are just inspirational. I wasn't going to ring in and waste your time tonight, but I just need to say this so that everybody that hears this podcast understands. If there was more Hooters and more Andrew Weidemanns and more Benny Duxhams and more, I can't even think of all the names at the moment. There's so many people on Andrew's meeting each week around Australia. We'd have some hope to stand up to all the people in the bureaucracy and fix what's going wrong. So if you guys can help support the Across Victoria Alliance in any way, or just get the message out to everybody across Australia of what's going on down there. I mean, these guys are facing a government that brought in laws that are giving power companies permission to walk onto their properties, just enter their properties. And everybody would have seen Benny's fight down there in the last few weeks. The police turned up to some of those locations. I mean, it's just a huge infringement on your rights as a property owner to know that your government has given laws to industrial energy companies that they can just come onto your property. So we need to back these guys. We need to back them to the hilt. They need our help. No matter where you are in this nation, find out how you can give them a hand. And if you know anybody that can go along to that conference, please put them in Andrew's direction and to get the information on how to get a ticket, or jump on the Facebook page, because I tell you what, Australia's in the fight for its life at the moment, because without productive farmlands, without the rural landscapes, without the country towns that make up the backbone of this nation, we have nothing left. So we need to fight to save this before it's destroyed beyond repair, because once these things are gone, they're gone for good. So thank God for Andrew, thank God for Hooter, and thank God for all the people around Australia who are fighting to save this nation from reckless renewables at the moment, because we need them. Thank God.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for calling in. Maybe we'll get you to stick around, because John's going to give us his fantasy government. I know we might get some good reactions out of you, Katie. So, John. I mean, before we get to John, Katie, do you think John's a good person to be picking the government? I mean, are you in for any surprises?
You know what I reckon? I reckon what I've discovered is, I was a copper for many years. Any person who's given service to their community or served in the Defence Force or frontline services of any sort has a far better judgment of what's going on in this country than some person that went to university, joined a union group, and then made their way up through the bureaucratic ladder. So Hooter, more than anybody, would probably know who needs to run the country.
Righto, mate. Who do you pick?
First I want to say that I couldn't hear either of Katie and Andrew, so I've got no idea who they picked. Hopefully they didn't pick me.
We did.
Just one point I want to make before I go into my fantasy. Not all of us can hold a hose, but we've all got an opportunity to vote, and we've all got a say. So I think moving forward, we need to remember that. And when it gets to the ballot, make your voice, look at who you're voting for, and make your vote count. So, like I said, I don't know what Andrew said, but I'm going with new blood, because I basically feel what we've had before hasn't worked out too well. Maybe they made some good choices, but I think some of them made some pretty frig ones as well. So I'm going with new blood, and I've probably always done that with my sport and stuff like that. I want to back the young ones in. So I think we need a real someone at the top needs to be a natural leader, someone that's prepared to grab the whole of the state, whole of the country, and wrap them up and sell them a vision and take them on a journey, and know that it's going to be a hard road and we're going to have to work hard, but we've just got to stand behind you, and you're going to show us the way, and you're going to give us the confidence and the foresight to lead us, and we know that we're going to go somewhere. So I think, we're going with a natural leader, someone that knows a bit about everything, basically, but is someone that can inspire people. I think the treasurer, no surprises, needs to be a real business person, but I think they need to be a genuine business person. They need to know that how businesses work. Just about all our politicians basically have never run anything themselves. They've come straight out of school, straight into universities, and then kiss someone's backside to get where they want to be, and then they get voted in and then become whatever they want to be, basically, with no life experience. So I'm going with someone that's, maybe 40-ish. It's been out there, it's done it pretty tough, but it's come out the other side and been a real strong advocate, and has got the runs on the board from a business sense. I think we need someone that's switched on manufacturing-wise. Like I said, I'm taking the easy road here, but I think someone that has got a lot of experience in manufacturing and stuff. This person may be a little bit older, because this is probably a really tricky one to nail, but just to know all the intricate things work. Basically the renewables, I just can't understand why we're building the renewables out in the middle of no man's land. They should be built close to the city. Data centers and stuff are going to rob us of huge amounts of power. Yep, we're going to build these things miles from nowhere and put up huge transmission lines, upset everybody, wreck everything, and for what? They may as well just be in the city or close to the city. Put them on the roofs of houses and things like that, and that's my thought. So I think we need someone in manufacturing that's smart, that can lead forward with that and knows modern technology really well and what's going to work for us. I think from the agricultural side, we definitely need a farmer. And Andrew, I'm going to throw you under the bus here. I think someone like Andrew, might not necessarily be him, but someone that's got the experience of what he's got and has got the runs on the board, and he's worked in a few different avenues, and he's got passion. You've got to have people in these jobs have got to have passion. So Andrew, someone like that, as an example, would be perfect. And then I think we're going to go back to the police, fire, nurses, and teachers. They're the backbone of our society. They control, they control our kids. They have to work hard with that. We have to get back to, these kids mucking up and stuff like that. We've got to call them into line, and we need to make some responsibilities around that. And there's a role for parents to play and stuff like that. We've taken that parents' role away a little bit, and I think we need to get back to that. So I'm looking for someone that's probably experienced in that field. I was probably impressed with Brad Batten, the way he stood up. I'm not saying he's the person, but someone like that's, he's got some runs on the board. He's done business. He's been a policeman. He knows how things work. He's got a family. I think.
Can you just tell us what happened there? Because for people that are not in Victoria, what happened to Brad Batten? And how do you, as a Victorian, feel about that he's been moved aside? Look.
I don't know the situation, and at the end of the day, the party's got to explain that. I don't have to explain their thoughts or whatever, but I thought he was actually starting to get somewhere, and I think he was a person that I was starting to relate to, because, I think he's, like I said, he's got those attributes. He's done it. He knows exactly. He hasn't gone straight from school straight into politics. So, but look, the other side of it, you've got to admire the guy. He's been basically shafted or at some point something hasn't gone right, and he hasn't thrown the towel in. He's stuck behind chess and all that. So look, as an admiration thing, I've really got it for him. But probably from his perspective too, he obviously thinks that Jess can take the path forward to a better place. So probably from our perspective, I'm really hoping he's right, and I hope that the government have made the right choice. But to me, it's more so, I'm not going to get too hung up on the Liberals. We just need parties to stand up. We need people, whether it's independents or whatever, we need them to stand up and create a better place for Victoria. And I don't care who that is, to be honest. I'm not going to say who I vote for, but I just want people to get behind the people that are going to do the right thing by us, not the right thing by their back pocket, or the right thing by someone that's voted them in or given them money to get where they are and to get an easy street later on. We want people in politics that love their country, love their state, love their neighbour, and want to see us be a better place above anything else. That's all that's got to matter. I want a future for my kids. I want a future for my grandkids, and I think that's where we've got to look forward, moving forward. And my 5 people, they've got to have those same core beliefs, and they'll be the ones that I'll 100% support no matter what.
What do you think about that, Katie?
Yeah, I still need some names, Hooter. Who in particular? Who do you want to run Australia?
Yeah, it's Australia. Sorry, not the state. Hooter.
Who do you reckon to make a good Prime Minister once we get rid of Albo? Because see my hat, make Albo go away. Who are we going to put in his place?
Yeah, I don't think he can hear us, can he?
Maybe John can't hear you guys, but that's all right. We're at the end now, so thanks.
I like his analogies though. Like he's spot on, I reckon, with all of the different attributes that we need. We're sort of looking at it from people that have been reasonably successful, and it's a pretty thin list, isn't it? When you think about it, when you talk about I was talking about the arable area in Australia for producing food. We haven't got a lot of arable area in terms of the politicians, previous, past, or whatever at the moment, have we to really run this country, and that's our problem. Good policies, and I think that Hooter touched on a really good point there in terms of the education system in Australia, the curriculum. Very important that I think we get back to true Australian curriculum in our education system. And I feel like that's been missing, and I think we're now paying the price of that in the current thinking here in Australia. And that's a big thing to get our head around. But I reckon that we need people to actually want to belong to Australia, and it starts in the schools.
Well said, mate. Well, we've got a lot of battles to fight in this country. Where we are on the wrong trajectory, which is what we talk about a lot on this show, and try and point it out and try and come up with solutions. But it's good to know that we've got some real Aussies out there like you guys fighting the good battle. And look, if you don't give up, you will succeed in the end. And I encourage you guys to keep doing what you're doing, and I encourage the audience to follow you guys. Head to the Across Victoria Alliance Facebook page and keep up to date with all your events and petitions and everything that you're trying to do. You all volunteers. Even Katie with Let's Rethink Renewables, I know how hard she works. She's working 16-hour days at a job, at her business, and also trying to dedicate time to Let's Rethink Renewables and all the other stuff that she's involved in. We're all volunteers trying to make Australia a better place, and we don't get paid. We don't get we don't get much support. We only rely on the people out there to support us and to support what we're trying to do. And we might not be perfect at the end of the day, but we only survive through the support of everyday Australians and people like that watch this show. So I encourage you to get out, support these guys. Thank you guys very much for coming on. Head, as I said, to their stuff and keep up to date with everything that we're doing. I suppose, Andrew, you're the chairman of Across Victoria Alliance. I'll give you the final word before we finish up. Is there anything that you want to get across to the audience before we finish tonight?
No, look, I think you've summed it up pretty well. We're all passionate Australians, and we want to make Australia great. And that's the future is on our step at the moment, because I feel like Australia in the last probably 4 or 5 years since COVID has just run a race downwards, and it's sort of a race to the bottom. What we want to see is a race back to the top, and to get Australia up and going again. And we see things on the Bondi Beach and all of that. At the moment, we see government coming together and arguing about how to fix it. Well, the problem's been brewing for a lot longer before that actual action happened. And I think that these are examples. If we can't learn from that and move on, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble very quickly. And I think at the moment, it's a rush to the bottom rather than a rush to the top. So our group, very focused with people like Katie. You can see, extremely talented and able to articulate the issues very, very well. And, and Katie's a good example of somebody like within our group. If you want to get something done, you get those people that are the busiest to actually get stuff done. And that's how it seems to work. And we probably don't see that really.
We're always talking about that, Andrew. All the busy people are the ones who get everything done.
Yeah, that's it. We don't see that in our politicians, and to a large degree. But you know what? I feel like there's a real change in will be in our state, will be in South Australia potentially to some degree, but maybe not so. But certainly in Victoria, the next election is going to start to set the agenda for the next federal election. And people are starting to wake up to what's going on, hopefully. And so thanks very much for inviting us on. I know both Hooter and I are very pleased, and thank you, Katie, for helping organise this as well. And we wish the program and every success into the future. And maybe we might jump back on again later in the year and talk about what the group's up to, Stephen. So again, thanks very much. And to all the listeners out there, let's make Australia great.
Yeah, definitely. Well said, mate. And thanks for coming on. And we will have you back before the Victorian election, because I'm sure things will be heating up and spicing up then. But for all the listeners out there, thank you for keeping with us again. And if you know anyone out in a rural community that is finding it tough and feel like there's no one out there speaking for them, share this with them so they know that there's good people out there fighting on their behalf. But for now, we'll see you all next time. See you later.